As the season winds to a close, fans are interested in trophies, championships, and personal player records. But I've been thinking about the players who underperformed this year in the Premier League. And is the hobby going to label them as busts? Or are they potential buys going into next season? That's the topic of conversation today. What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the SlabStox FC Show. I'm Andrew at St. Croix Cards on Instagram, and I am so excited to be with all of you today. We are just a mere few weeks away from the end of the Premier League season. I do have to say I'm a little disappointed at just how Arsenal has fared over the past few weeks, but you know what? We're a young team, and we'll be back again next year, but I don't see us toppling City. But for me, what's interesting right now is the relegation battle. That is what's going on here at the bottom of the Premier League table, where the bottom three teams are going to drop out into the championship next year. And really, we already know that Southampton has already been relegated, even with just a few games to go. But really, it is a dogfight at the bottom of the table. Leicester City, Leeds United, Everton, and even Nottingham Forest right now are all struggling and fighting to stay above the relegation line. And just with a few games to go, I thought it would be important to look at just where those teams sit, which we just saw, and what games they've got coming up over the next couple weeks. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it on the screen. If you're listening, Leicester City have Newcastle away and West Ham away. Leeds United, West Ham away, and Spurs at home. Everton have Wolves away and Bournemouth at home, and Nottingham Forest have to have Arsenal coming to Nottingham Forest and Crystal Palace away. There's just a few points that separate all four of these teams, with two of them dropping into the championship next year. I still have an eye on Leeds United. There's so much U.S. men's national team implications there with Weston McKennie and Brendan Aronson and Tyler Adams. So a lot of U.S. men's national team's players there. And if they can stay above the drop zone and still play in the Premier League next year, I think that would be extremely positive for them and for the U.S. men's national team as a whole. But really, what's been on my mind this week has been not so much the disappointment of Arsenal, because that was there. And maybe that had a little bit to do with all of this. But I was looking and going, you know what? Arsenal played so well for most of the season, sitting in first place for so long. And for me, I didn't expect them to be in first for that long. I didn't expect them to be in contention to win the league. So it was a blessing that they were doing that all season long, playing really attractive football. But I was a little disappointed. And then I thought, you know what? Who are some of the other players around the Premier League that have been disappointments? Maybe they got a big transfer move. Maybe their expectations and after a great season was an even better season, and that we just haven't seen. So for me, it's, that hobby buzzword of busts. Do we see these players as busts, or are they low in their pricing now where they're potential buys if you believe in the player? If you believe the player is going to perform back to where they were previously, or you just have faith in that player moving forward. So for me, some of this is going to be my own personal opinion, and please take that as my personal opinion. But I would love to know your thoughts on these players as we talk about them. And I don't think you can talk disappointment in the Premier League this year than looking at none other than Chelsea. Chelsea sitting 11th in the table. It has not gone the way they thought it would go. The massive spending, we've talked about it on this show at length. And Mason Mount is one of those players that really had a great 2021-2022 campaign. He played in 32 games. He had 11 goals. He had 10 assists. Chelsea finished third in the Champions League spots in the Premier League. And you fast forward to this year, He's played in 24 games. He's got 3 goals and 2 assists. He doesn't have any goals since December 27th, and he's played in just 16 minutes since February 26th. So it really got me to thinking, is Mason Mount, did we see his best season? Was 2021, 2022, 11 goals, 10 assists? I always look at it and say, is that the ceiling? Is that the ceiling for a 24-year-old Mason Mount who is in the center of the midfield of a Chelsea team that just a few years ago won the Champions League? And I, thinking to myself, okay, where does this guy go now? Rumors are swirling right now that he may possibly not be at Chelsea next year. I know Pochettino's coming in, but there's talks that I think, the contract situation is up in the air, and he could be seeing the exit of Stamford Bridge here over the summer. But I think that there, as a 24, what he's been able to do and accomplish on such a big stage, even to play for England, and at only 24 years old, maybe a change of scenery might do him some good. So I thought I would look at the 2019-2020 Topps Chrome UCLA Sapphire Green. Now, this is on a 75, excuse me. It's a Pop 23. And I think it's important to note because May 5th, just a few weeks ago, a little over a week ago, this card in a PSA 10, so it's the green sapphire out of 75 from 2018-2019 Topps Chrome, sold for $235. Now that's up just a little bit from a December 25th, a Christmas Day sale in 2022 of $203.50. But the reason I bring both of these PSA 10s up is because if you look back to August, so in the build-up to the World Cup, August 21st, on PWCC's weekly auction, the 2019 Topps Chrome Sapphire Green out of 75 PSA 10 sold for $444. Now, I know people are going to sit there and say, 2022, build up to the World Cup, very different than May of 2023. And you're right. And so you see the price depreciation. You've seen it go from $444, and lose over half of its value in not very long period of time, just 8 months or so. And so my question then becomes, it's got to be player performance to a degree, because we haven't seen him on the pitch. We haven't seen him in good form. But at 24 years old, Mason Mount, have we seen his best? And for me, that's more of a question mark. I think, what we saw last year and his abilities in the second half of the season, I thought were really impressive. Now, it does concern me that he had a rough first start of last year and then really turned it on in the second half. We really haven't seen him much at all this year and in his production points. And multiple managers have come in, and multiple managers have still kept Mason Mount on the bench. But I think at 24, what we saw last year, I think, in certain instances, it may be if the price is right. Thanks, Bob Barker. But if the price is right, I think that there is an opportunity at pretty low risk to get in on certain Mason Mounts in the hopes and if you believe in the player. And really that's what it comes down to, doesn't it? Is that, do we believe in the player? We're not just buying, to buy, but we want to look at the players. We want to watch them on the pitch. We want to do our analysis and say, okay, do I believe in this player moving forward? Is it a bump in the road, or is it going to be a continuous slide downhill? So this is just one example, that green sapphire out of 75 PSA 10. The other one that I thought was interesting as well is the 2020 Panini Immaculate Collection. This is a PSA 9 of his rookie. This is serial number to 99. One sold May 1st, 2022. So go back almost a calendar year. It sold for $180 on Golden, PSA 9. Now, fast forward to May 10th, so just over a year, 2023, just a few days ago, a PSA 9 of the Immaculate Collection out of 99, rookie of Mason Mount, sold for $54.73. So almost, it's down about 2/3. It's almost, and I'm not a math guy, but I can do the math and sit there and be like, we're really, we're down 2/3 of the price from that we were a year ago. And for me, those are the things that I start to think about and go, okay, now prices are falling. Production on the pitch is part of it, but he's a 24-year-old who has performed well, even on loan at Derby County. He played well. He has shown himself in the Premier League. He's shown himself in the Champions League. Would you be willing to take a chance on Mason Mount for $54.73? Now, I'm not saying it's going back to $180. I'm not saying it's going to $500. I'm not saying it's going to $1,000. That's not what I'm saying. I think if you look at player performance, you look at the seasons players have had, and ask yourself, is there better to come out of Mason Mount? And so those are the questions I think that we have to answer, and I can't answer that for you and you can't answer that for me, but what do you think about Mason Mount? So he's our first candidate. Now, is he bust or is he buy? And that's the question that, I would love to know your thoughts. Do you think he's a buy at this point from where his prices were to where they are now? Or do you say, you know what, for me, it's a hard pass and I'm going to put my money elsewhere? Now, the second person we have to talk about, I think, just in the scheme of bust or buy, Jadon Sancho. Jadon Sancho, 23 years old. The hype was real when he came over from the Bundesliga, from Borussia Dortmund to Manchester United. I think it worked out to about $100 million transfer fee. And he had some really decent years. That 2019-2020 season for Jadon Sancho was huge. He played 32 games. He had 17 goals, 17 assists, just was flying high. And you knew Man United was in on him in the summer of 2021. They wanted him pretty bad. 2020, it didn't get done. 21, 22 back in the Bundesliga. Still only 26 games this time, 8 goals, 12 assists, still producing pretty well. He gets his massive move to Man United, and in 23 games this year, he's had 5 goals and 3 assists. So 23 games, not a lot, but we know that he was dealing with where he stepped away from the team for a little bit. New manager, Ten Hag has kind of brought him in and out of the team, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens to Jadon Sancho moving forward. Because again, I think really often, and I know I've used it in this episode, but the word bust. We use the word bust with teenagers, right? I've heard people, I've talking to people at shows, and you throw out the name Ricardo Pepi, and they're like, "Oh man, bust!" From U.S. men's national team striker to Augsburg, couldn't cut it. Now he's in the Eredivisie, and his team got relegated. And I look at it and go, I mean, the kid is 19. Like, do you remember when you were 19? Like, I wasn't playing professional football. I wasn't bouncing from Texas to Germany to, halfway around the world. Like that just wasn't me. There's so much pressure and stress that are on these kids. I can't even put into perspective. I don't even know the stress that Jadon Sancho is under, moving from the Bundesliga, $100 million transfer fee, back to England, where now you are the big name at Manchester United. And this is not the first time that we've seen big names come into Manchester United and struggle because of the pressure, because of the size and the reputation of Manchester United. I think of guys like Angel Di Maria. I think of players like Memphis Depay, who have come in big expectations, and they have not been able to reach the expectations. So Jadon Sancho is an interesting one to me. I know it hasn't been a great year, but I wanted to start and look at his 2018 Topps Chrome Refractor, PSA 10, because I think just the shift in pricing. So May 2nd, this card, 2018 Topps Chrome, PSA 10, Refractor of Jadon Sancho, sold for $26.60. $26.60. Now, to back up just a little bit, August 8th of 2022. So we're back into August. The same refractor, 2018-2019 Topps Chrome, UEFA, PSA 10, sold for $201.01. And if that's not doing it for you, you back up into March 27th of 2022. And this same card, PSA 10, sold for $414. So we've gone from $414 in March of 2022, end of March of 2022. Fast forward to May of 2023, and we are just over $26 for a 2018 Topps Chrome refractor. Now, I get it. His pricing was extremely high after the transfer, and many people were extremely excited for him to come into the Premier League. But to go from $414 to $26 makes me scratch my head just a little bit, because he's 23 years old. He's obviously dealing with things. If you've watched the news, he stepped away from the team. We've seen that. But for me, is it worth a $26 buy? Is it worth a $30 buy on a refractor like this? Now, I get it's not numbered, but you got to think about, where is the potential? Now, I think the quality is there. Now, this is me speaking personally. We've seen flashes of it. If you go back and watch some of those 5 goals, if he could replicate that on a consistent basis, I think this looks very different. Now, the reason we're at $30 is because he hasn't been able to replicate it. He hasn't been able to transition. But are you willing to give it time? Are you willing to? Because $26, I mean, like, that's grading fees, essentially, right? And for me, it's like, okay, do I believe in this guy enough to go out and spend some of that money to see where it goes? Now, I'm not in any of these cards that I talk about. I'm not talking about going back to 414. I'm not talking about getting back to the prices that were in early 2022. Not what I'm saying. But I'm saying if you got this opportunity low, with the ability to see where it goes next year, because I don't think anybody is talking about Mason Mount or Jadon Sancho right now. Now, there's a couple other names that are interesting to me, but I wanted to finish up with Jadon Sancho in his Kaboom card. His 2021, 2022. This is the Panini Donruss Kaboom. They're both raw copies. One sold May 4th of this year for $175. And if you go back one calendar year, so May 16th, 2022, this card, this Kaboom of Jadon Sancho was sold on eBay for $510. So maybe $175, and you're sitting there saying, nope, not going to take a $175 flyer on a Kaboom of Jadon Sancho, but $30 for that refractor to see where it goes, that Topps Chrome refractor. Maybe, just maybe, if I see it in a bargain box or I see it online on auction going for low amounts, I might just place that bid. But that's only if you believe in the player. And I would love to, we've got through two now, Mason Mount, Jadon Sancho. Who would you rather have moving into next year? But there's other names on that list. One of them is Dominic Calvert-Lewin, 26-year-old striker from Everton. Had a really fantastic year in 2020, 2021. 33 games, 16 goals, 3 assists. And over the past 2 years has really struggled to get onto the pitch. Injuries has kind of derailed his last 2 seasons. 2021-22, he had 17 games, 5 goals, 2 assists. And then this year so far, 16 games, 2 goals, and 1 assist. And he's really, he's prolific. I mean, when he can stay healthy, those 16 goals, I don't think is a fluke. I think it's there, but he's 26 years old. And I think he is a major reason that Everton is in that bottom relegation battle. Not having consistency in goals. We don't have Calvert-Lewin. We're going to talk about another former Everton player in Richarlison. And when you lose those type of players and their goal production, it definitely is going to hurt the overall ability of the team. If you can't score goals in the Premier League, you can't stay in the league. That's just kind of how it goes. We'll see if Sean Dyche can kind of turn this team around with just a couple of games to play. We've seen them put in some decent performances, and even the last performance here with Calvert-Lewin on the pitch, they looked a little bit more dynamic. Their ability to move forward and go forward. He does have a good ability to hold up play, and so I'm interested to see kind of what happens with Everton. It would be catastrophic for the historical reasons of the Premier League. I don't think Everton has been relegated since the 50s, the 1950s. Like, this is a massive, massive club that is on the verge of dropping into the championship. So really excited to see what happens to them in the last 2 games of the seasons. But I did want to look at the Kaboom of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. This is a raw copy going back to September 19th of 2021. So that big, we're in the COVID craze right now, $157.50 for a raw copy. I also wanted to see that September 2021 was just off the heels of that pretty good season that he was having. A lot of people were really high on him at the time, 23, 24 years old, big striker. Is he destined for another season just like the one he had, 16 plus, maybe gets to 20 goals? That just really didn't happen. And we can see that, because the most recent sale, May 6th of this year, it's not a raw copy. So we've gone from 150 plus to May 6, 2023, $49.99 for an SGC 9.5 of the 2020-2021 Panini Prism Kaboom of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So here for under $50, a Kaboom of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And for me, you start to analyze the player and you look at player performances. The biggest issue for me is not 1 year of injuries, 2 years of injuries. So what is are we seeing a string of events that is happening to Dominic Calvert-Lewin? Now, do I hope that he stays healthy? Can he stay healthy? That is yet to be seen. One great year, 2 injury-plagued years. What is next year going to bring? So he is one that I might just sit there and go, I don't think, I think the potential, the quality is there in the player, but can he play enough games to put in the goals that he needs to? And Everton is on the brink of dropping into the championship. Are people going to be looking for Calvert-Lewin if he goes into the championship? And that's to say that he stays at Everton. Does he get a big move? Now, the other card that I wanted to look at was the 2020, 2021. This is the Panini Prism Color Blast SGC 10. So really love how the Color Blast pop in an SGC holder. April 16th of 2023. So just a month ago. This card sold for $99.99. You go just to January of 2022. So he's still younger. He's coming off a great season. He's kind of struggling through injuries. This card sold for $205.50. So we've lost over half its value in just over a calendar year. So one of the guys that maybe would be an injury concern for me moving forward, but definitely one as a striker. We know how the hobby loves strikers, and if he has a pretty great year, depending on where he plays, you could see that price continue to go up. But for me, it would be a question mark and a caution. Now, the weird one for me, Kalvin Phillips, I know he's not a goal scorer. I know he's not putting in goals week in and week out, but this guy was just on a different level for Leeds when he played there in the midfield. 2019-2020 in the championship, 37 games, 2 goals, 2 assists. 2020-2021, 29 games, a goal and 2 assists. Really, again, that defensive midfielder. And then 2021-2022, 20 games. So going from 29 to 20 games, he had an assist. And when he got his big move to Manchester City, people thought it was going to be the real deal. He was going to slide into that lineup. He has not been able to get into that lineup. Now, that lineup is impressive. Holy guacamole. They look fantastic. Manchester City is on a different level right now. We saw that against Real Madrid. They are cruising to a Champions League trophy and an FA Cup and the Premier League. The treble march is real, and it's a very real possibility that it's going to come down to, does Manchester United stop the treble at the FA Cup at Wembley? It's the storylines there are absolutely fantastic. Manchester City, Manchester United. But I digress, because we got to talk about Kalvin Phillips. 27 years old. Injuries have been a concern. He's even been called out on his fitness by Pep. Has not seen the pitch this year much. 9 games at all. And really the pricing does say a lot about that. So his rookie Prism Orange out of 25 from 2020-2021 Prism. This is a raw copy. It sold February 17th of 2022. So just over a year ago, year and a couple months. Sold for $160. Fast forward to early May of this month. May 5th to be precise, a raw copy sold for $25. Now, Kalvin Phillips is one that I look at. He even, I think, made a few substitute appearances in the World Cup, still went to the World Cup, but has not seen the field really in most of Manchester City's games. And some of those games are massive blowouts, like against Real Madrid. And he's just not getting into the lineup. So the thing for me is I don't think there's a place for Phillips at City. I could be very wrong, but I think he needs to move on. He needs some regular playing time. And again, the health is an issue. We've seen that from the Championship to the Premier League with Leeds. He had that kind of injury concern where he missed a couple games the year before his transfer. He gets to Manchester City. He's still dealing with injuries. He does make the World Cup and he does make a few appearances, but then he's, fitness levels and just in more injury concerns. He has not been able to find his footing at Manchester City and maybe a move away, but he is a little bit older, 27, defensive midfielder. So unless you're a fan of the team that he's on or he's going to, for me, this would be a pass for me. This would not be one that I would be like, yes, potential is there to move forward. Because again, the hobby values so much the goal scoring mentality. But if you like the player, if you believe in the player's ability, then you shouldn't care what I think. You should just say, you know what, I'm going to buy this at $25. But Kalvin Phillips, and then we also see, some of those silver logo bars from Impeccable. This is his 2021-2022 logo silver bar out of 32. We saw it sell in November of 2022. November of 2022 being the World Cup. And the World Cup just beginning. It sold for $109.95. He was on the team. He was on the roster. But May 19th of 2023, March 19th of 2023. A similar logo bar sold for $48, and this is the 1 out of 32. Both raw copies, but you can definitely see the price decrease, which is not, again, this is you should be seeing them all kind of go down in price if they had poor performances for a calendar year. Last one, again, I said we'd talk a little bit about an Everton forward, and that's Richarlison. Richarlison for Everton. Before Everton, I believe it was Watford. Played good for Watford and then made the move to Everton. Had a couple back-to-back 13-goal seasons, and then he followed up 2020, 2021 with 7 goals and a couple assists. 2021-22, he had 10 goals and 5 assists, and then he made his move to Tottenham, where in 25 games, he has 1 goal and 4 assists. Now, his only goal came at the end of April 30th against Liverpool. We saw that play out. If you watched the game, he gets the tying goal, 3-3. I think he takes off his shirt and he's going crazy, and Liverpool turn around and march right down and score to beat Tottenham 4-3. And so that's the one lone goal. Now, he's had a few assists, but you would expect more from a player who is playing alongside of Heung-min Son and Harry Kane and Richarlison. You just think that, maybe he would have more production. But then the question is, you've seen kind of a larger sample size, multiple years of Richarlison in the Premier League, where he's never scored more than 13 goals. And for me, that that kind of consistency of not cracking 15 or not getting into 20 starts to make you wonder, okay, at 26 years old, is that the limit? Is that the ceiling? And I like his color blast too, so I use that as well. Now, this is his color blast from 2020, 2021 Prism. It's a PSA 10. This sold February 25th of 2023 for $431 at a best offer. And then it sold again May 1st of 2023, that PSA 10 Color Blast out of Prism for $287. So we've seen a slow decrease in price there as well. And again, with Tottenham and needing to kind of bring in a new manager, where does he fit in there? A lot of question marks because there's a lot of managerial turnover on some of these clubs. But really, the question then becomes, out of those 5 guys, who do you want? If you had to pick one to buy, or one that you wanted to buy, who would it be? And maybe, just maybe, it's none of those 5. If it's one of the, maybe I didn't mention one. Is there one that I didn't bring up this week that you're like, what? Andrew, St. Croix Cards has made a mistake. He dropped the ball. This guy should have been talked about. Leave them in the comments below. I'm always down to talk football, to talk players, to talk cards. Like, this is what I love. And I really do enjoy the conversations that I continue to have weekly on the Instagram, in my DMs, and when you guys reach out here in the comment section on YouTube as well. So we're going to move past the booms or the busts or the buys, and we do need to talk a little bit about those championships, those trophies that are coming. And the championship playoff is really coming to a conclusion. Happy birthday to me. May 27th, we have a championship final at Wembley between Coventry and Luton Town. And in goal for Luton Town, you got to throw the U.S. men's national team goalie in there. Ethan Horvath is in goal, and what a story! Like, if you watch, or if you're big into like the Wrexham scene, you got to look into Luton Town. Just a decade ago, they were outside of professional football. They were in the National League, and within a decade, they've kind of put themselves one game away, one win at Wembley away from the Premier League. And even like rumors are swirling, like and I don't understand all the rules and regulations, but like the stadium is not up to code to Premier League levels, and millions of dollars would have to be pumped into their stadium to get it to meet the requirements of the Premier League. Like, if you guys know anything about that, I would love to know more information about that, because that's fascinating to me that like stadiums, even if clubs get to the Premier League, like they've got to bring it up to code themselves, which is crazy to me, because they've done all the work to get themselves into the Premier League, and then to dump in a large sum of money just to get the stadium ready seems to me like, wow, that's crazy, because you could take that money and maybe purchase or find some transfers to come in and play for you. But that's just me. So big game coming May 27th. Super excited about that. And then we would be remiss if we did not talk about this game The final is set. I think it's still in Istanbul, if I'm not mistaken, but there are rumors that it might be changing. But we have Manchester City, Inter Milan going at it for the championship, the Champions League trophy. And wow, did Manchester City look good today? They are a runaway freight train, in my opinion. If I am wrong, please correct me in the comments below. But who do you think is coming out of this game? And does Manchester City have enough in the tank to complete the treble? The complete the treble would be extremely an accomplishment, and we have to look, at Erling Haaland. You look at all the differences in the years past, and even last year's Man City's debacle at Real Madrid, and kind of costing them a trip to the Champions League final. And this year, they did not let that happen at the Etihad. They took it to Real Madrid. They brought it back, and it looked extremely impressive. But give credit and shout out to Inter Milan. Like, this is not two legs. This is one game, winner take all. Anything can happen, and I think we've seen that in the football world. And I'm excited to sit down. I'm going to get my popcorn ready, and I am just going to watch this happen. So super, super excited about this game. But like I said, I love the championship final. The most expensive game in sports, how much money's on the line for a club to go from the championship to the Premier League. Champions League final, where can Manchester City finally get their coveted Champions League trophy, or is Inter Milan set to be the upset in the making? We'll have to wait and see, but excited about that one as well. Finally, I just wanted to kind of throw this out there. I know we've seen select Serie A. Select La Liga. We've seen select Premier League. This May 19th, we're going to see select Serie A. And Kavicha is the main chase. The player from Napoli, he is in the product. And he is going to be a big one that people are going to be looking at and chasing. But select, I'm a fan of the early select too. 2015, 2016 select. Even 2017 at select with Mbappe's rookie in there as well. But I really just like to look at the cards. They look real great, and looking to see kind of how they play out as select has kind of come back with all the different leagues. So finding those players that you like, those players that you're high on that maybe not a ton of people know about yet, and finding them in the checklist. Make sure you take a look, Cardboard Connection, and take a look at the checklist so you can kind of see who's in it. And do your research before jumping into breaks or knowing who's in it and what the possibilities are before we're going at it. But that's really all I have for you guys today. I thank you for joining the conversation on, are they a bust or are they buy? We've got some great finals to look forward to. I can't wait to talk a little bit more about that when we come back in just a couple weeks. But that's it for me. Again, I'm Andrew at St. Croix Cards. You guys have a great day and really make it a great day. We'll see you next time.